Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 22 of the anime series, Akagami no Shirayuki-hime, or Snow White with the Red Hair. I was completely taken by surprise in the form and function of this episode, how it all played out, and very much calling to, certain aspects of what I was talking about and speculating that we would have much more sort of, building up of this idea of Mitsuhide and Kiki coming together. And we kind of sort of had that, but not in any way, shape, or form like I had hoped. And being very much not the type of person who gets into shipping characters. Am I thoroughly shipping them? And by the end of the last episode, looking at the PV for this episode, I had taken it for granted that maybe we were actually going to see them coming together in place as a sort of misdirection, because of course we saw that since Zen, Shirayuki, and everyone was coming home to Cloudiness, he was going to be walking headlong into all of these proposals of marriage and have to deal with the responsibilities as is his princely sort of call, to deal with marriage interviews and those kinds of things. And Izana was definitely seeming to have taken some pleasure in this, very antagonistic is he with Zen. But every step of the way, he's just trying to hone his younger brother into that princely fashion, the form and function of what is necessitated in that role in the kingdom, especially if Izana himself is to have to consider taking a wife at some point, and the ramifications of that. Of course, that will put Zen in the spotlight as the youngest prince, the second prince, and so he's just trying to get his mind around that, and try to get Zen into that position, and having a little fun by the wayside. But as we see, Izana is not completely unforgiving, because along the list of names was included Kiki's name, because she is the daughter of a count. And I love that. I love the misdirection, like I said, completely unexpected on my part, to see him, going ahead and taking part in this marriage interview thing. He gets it sort of whittled down to, rather than having a big gala ball and having all these, princesses to be wives, coming in and having to deal with all of that, being put very much on the spot. He whittles it down to the point where if he just has one solitary interview, it'll slide for now. So, of course, Izana had Kiki's name on that list, so Zen would get creative, and that whole aspect of, like Obi cowering in the background, it's really him stifling laughter. I thought in the PV from the previous episode, for this episode, he was going to be freaking out and... like Mitsuhide's standing there with a half grimace smirk on his face. Zen is completely sweating all to hell, like, worried about putting Kiki on the spot. Will you please do me this favor? Just pretending to be my marriage interview and all this stuff. You were on the list. It is official. It'll help me, lay the dogs at bay for now and all this kind of stuff. Highly uncomfortable. And Kiki is the kind of woman that she's all kinds of kick-ass. She's all kinds of awesome. And she actually went along with this. She actually decked herself out in a beautiful gown and all this kind of stuff. And I just loved hearing the reminiscences of, Kiki and Zen, about how Kiki and Mitsuhide had met 5 years hence and all that stuff, and really expounding upon the bond and the dynamic between those two characters. If nothing else, I was left much more wanting to ship them and see them come together, especially in the fact that Mitsuhide, he walks in on Zen and Kiki sparring so long ago, and he mistakes her for another young man in the kingdom and all this stuff, and calls her young sir, whatever it is, for a time afterward. And I would love to have been a fly on the wall when he finally makes the conclusion, oh, this is actually a young woman. And then adding, to that, when he started to, sort of circulate around to the idea of, well, I really like and admire and appreciate Kiki and all that kind of stuff, where there is that playful banter. And of course, Obi is having a field day. Obi is to Mitsuhide what Izana is to Zen, in just pushing buttons and like, well, if it was anyone other than Zen courting, Kiki around the courtyard, you would probably be in hell. You would probably want to kill, and like... all of a sudden, Mitsuhide's complete demeanor changes, and he's like murderous, and Obi's just like, I'm out of here, And they're all tiptoeing around the tulips because they don't know that Shirayuki is actually aware of what's going on. Everyone's already talking about this in the kingdom. Some characters are hilariously worried that Zen is actually moving on from Shirayuki. And, there are probably some worries on her part, but she's giving Zen the benefit of the doubt. This is even much more of a sort of, putting the relationship between them under the microscope and really causing tension and seeing how well or not they rebound out of it, as opposed to, Shirayuki's going away to Tanbarun and dealing with, Raj and all that kind of stuff. Very much are we seeing, in answer to this situation, of course, on both sides, there are some fears and there are some concerns, but even now, Shirayuki is a woman of her own means, and she's going to let Zen come to her, even if she is feeling sort of bothered by all of this. And I love Ryu's welcome to her coming home. He drops all the paperwork, shocked to see her, and they're right back to the action of doing all the herbalist stuff and not even skipping a beat, as Garrick notes, and all that stuff. The charm of this series, the charm of its characters, it's just beautiful. I love it. I bask in the glow of it every single episode. And I think the utmost sort of surprising factor, of course, came toward the end with Izana challenging Zen once again. They finally had a face-to-face confrontation, and he is feeling Zen out. And it calls all the way back to one of their first discussions about Zen's sort of plans, what he planned to do with Shirayuki. Did he really plan to make her his wife? And, could he foresee a future in his princely duties without her and all these kinds of things? And Zen has evolved, but he hasn't backed down from that. And I love, in his conviction, does Izana finally say, he concedes. He's like, now that I put you through all of these hurdles, and these hoops, I made you jump through all of these hoops, both you and Shirayuki, I see you are adamant. I see this is the way things ought to be. And I will become one of your allies to this cause. And at first, as he says that, I'm taken aback. I'm like, okay, what's the catch? When's the other leg going to drop? But they hold on him. And he seems sincere. And there is no but. There is no sort of other leg dropping at the moment. Any sort of stipulation in order for this to be put forth. Now, with the PV for the next episode, some of the dialogue does seem to suggest to me that there are motions through which Shirayuki will have to go, will have to be processed in order to, I guess, make sort of she and Zen's coming together in marital bliss, legal, or maybe orchestrated so that it is befitting of the rules and regulations of the kingdom, or something along those lines. There may be some challenges yet for her to behold, and that's just my speculation. I don't know if that's going to play out to be true or not, but I would expect so, being that she is not, as yet, anyone of formality or royalty, in a sense, so far as we know. And so I've been long wondering how they were going to skirt that edge, if they were going to be capable of that, because she doesn't have that sort of aristocracy. And I would think that would be something that would necessitate her being considered, even just barely considered, for marriage with Zen. And so I think that is what they're tipping the hat of. But much as I said with the last episode, I completely mistook the majority of the PV for this episode, what was going to be unfolding in it. And it was still a highly enjoyable episode. I loved seeing, again, the foundations of how Mitsuhide and Kiki came together. I loved seeing Zen being given and utilizing this sort of trickery to get around, to skirt around the edges of this whole, marriage proposal, marriage interview thing, and not have to have a big gala ball and all this kind of stuff, where he would have to presumably entertain all of these women. And, that would probably drive Shirayuki mad. It would kind of drive me to laughter, because it would probably be really uncomfortable. Because they are, well and truly meant to be together. And that's the end game for really their characters, even as we still watch them going through the motions of growing up and finding themselves and applying themselves to their skills and whatever those things are, especially with Shirayuki, who is utmost curious and very much taking to that curiosity, you know, falling into it and really looking at the greater situation she finds herself in. What will make her the happiest? What will, you know, continue her being able to learn and grow and evolve? And I can only wish the best of those aspects for all of us. Of course, life is not always that simple, and it's not always as cut and dry and happily ever after as certain aspects of this series, but a lot of it is at least dealt with maturity and realism, to the point where I don't feel like I'm being lied to, or, you know, they're not issuing forth this idea of a candy-coated bunch of lies, you know, that kind of thing. It's straightforward, it's realistic, but it's also this fanciful fantasy backdrop with characters you can aspire toward and can make you feel good and leave you feeling that sense of affirmation by the end. And that's why I just thoroughly love this series. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 22 of Akagami no Shirayuki-hime, if you've seen it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if you had made any assumptions or theories going in, like I did, that, you know, as to how this would play out, whether you were surprised or not by it. I know some people have been following the manga and have read ahead and everything like that, and just be curious to find out if they are sticking to the page, if there's been any changes here, there, or anywhere along the line of the story and everything like that, and the pacing and whatever like that. Always a curiosity for me as someone who hasn't read the manga. No spoilers, please, though, if you are ahead of the game from where we leave off in the series. And so, yeah, otherwise, love it or hate it, I love hearing from you guys, having that conversation. That'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.